Stop what you're doing right now and point to your exact location. Go ahead, do it. Point to where you are. You're probably pointing at yourself, maybe at your chest or your head. You know exactly where you are, don't you? You're sitting in a chair, standing in a room, lying on a bed. You have a definite location in space. You are here, not there. This seems like the most obvious thing in the world. Everything has a location. Your phone has a position. Your car has a position. The Earth has a position. The idea that something could exist without having a definite location seems absurd, impossible, a violation of basic logic. But I'm about to shatter that assumption forever, because Werner Heisenberg discovered something so disturbing, so fundamentally mind-breaking, that he spent years trying to hide it from the world. Something so radical that it destroys our most basic understanding of what it means for something to exist. Electrons don't have positions. Not we can't know their positions. Not their positions are too small to measure. Electrons, literally, physically, fundamentally, do not have positions. They don't exist at specific locations in space. And this isn't just true for electrons. It's true for every particle in the universe, including the ones that make up your body right now. You think you know where you are, but according to quantum mechanics, you don't exist at any specific location either. Let me tell you the truth that Heisenberg tried to hide from you. For over 2,000 years, humans have believed in something called the principle of location. If something exists, it must exist somewhere. If you can't say where something is, then it doesn't really exist. This principle seemed so obviously true that no one even bothered to question it. It was just common sense. Ancient Greek philosophers built their understanding of reality on this foundation. If atoms exist, they must have definite positions. If objects are made of atoms, they must have definite positions. Everything that exists must be somewhere. This belief survived every scientific revolution. When Copernicus showed that the Earth orbits the Sun, he didn't challenge the idea that planets have positions. When Newton discovered the laws of motion, he assumed that objects have definite positions and move from one position to another. When Einstein developed relativity, he still maintained that objects exist at specific locations in spacetime. But in 1927, Werner Heisenberg made a discovery that obliterated this fundamental assumption. He found that electrons, the most basic building blocks of matter, violate the principle of location. They don't have positions in the way we understand positions. And here's the part that's going to blow your mind. Heisenberg knew how revolutionary this was. He knew it would destroy our understanding of reality. He knew it would terrify people, so he tried to hide it. Instead of clearly stating that electrons don't have positions, he formulated something called the uncertainty principle. He made it sound like a limitation on measurement, a technical problem about the precision of scientific instruments. He made it seem like electrons do have positions, we just can't measure them accurately. But that's not what the mathematics actually says. The mathematics says something far more radical. Electrons don't have positions to be measured. Let me explain what this actually means, and why it's so terrifying. In classical physics, every object has what's called a state, a complete description of all its properties at a given moment. For a baseball, this state includes its position, its velocity, its rotation, its temperature, and so on. If you know the complete state of a baseball, you know everything there is to know about it. For centuries, physicists assumed that electrons also had complete states. An electron would have a definite position, a definite velocity, a definite spin, and so on. The goal of quantum mechanics was to discover these properties and describe them mathematically. But when Heisenberg worked out the mathematics, he discovered something shocking. The equations of quantum mechanics don't describe electrons as having definite positions. Instead, they describe electrons as existing in what's called a superposition of all possible positions simultaneously. This isn't metaphorical. This isn't a limitation of our knowledge. This is what electrons actually are. Imagine trying to describe the location of a wave in the ocean. Where exactly is the wave? You can't point to a specific location because the wave exists across a region of space. It's spread out. But even this analogy doesn't capture how weird electrons are. Because a wave in the ocean is still made of water molecules that have definite positions. The wave is a pattern in something that exists at specific locations. But electrons aren't patterns in something else. Electrons are the patterns. They're pure pattern without substance, pure form without matter. They exist as probability waves in empty space, spread out across potentially vast regions, with no definite location anywhere. When you learned about atoms in school, you were probably shown pictures of electrons orbiting the nucleus like tiny planets. This is completely wrong. Electrons don't orbit anything because they don't have definite positions to orbit from. Instead, they exist as clouds of probability surrounding the nucleus, with different regions of the cloud representing different probabilities of finding the electron if you try to measure its position. But here's the really mind-bending part. Before you measure an electron's position, it doesn't have one. The probability cloud isn't our ignorance about where the electron is. The probability cloud is what the electron is. Only when you perform a measurement does the electron collapse into having a specific position. But this collapse appears to be random. You can't predict where the electron will appear, only calculate the probabilities of different outcomes. This means that measurement doesn't reveal the electron's position. Measurement creates the electron's position. Think about what this implies for everything you think you know about reality. Your body is made of atoms. Atoms are made of electrons, protons, and neutrons. If electrons don't have definite positions, then atoms don't have definite positions. If atoms don't have definite positions, then molecules don't have definite positions. If molecules don't have definite positions, then your body doesn't have a definite position. Right now, as you're watching this video, every atom in your body exists as a probability cloud. You don't have a definite location. You're spread out across space like a quantum ghost, existing everywhere and nowhere until something forces you to collapse into a specific location. But it gets worse. Much worse. If electrons don't have positions, then they also don't have paths. In classical physics, objects move by traveling along definite paths from one location to another. A baseball thrown from the pitcher's mound to home plate follows a specific trajectory through space. But electrons can't follow paths because they don't start at definite locations. Instead, they exist in superpositions of all possible paths simultaneously. An electron traveling from point A to point B doesn't take one path or another. It takes all possible paths at the same time. This has been verified experimentally in what's called the double-slit experiment. When electrons are fired at a barrier with two slits, they somehow pass through both slits simultaneously, even though that seems impossible. The evidence is undeniable. Electrons exist in multiple locations at the same time. This isn't just strange. It's a fundamental violation of logic. How can something exist in multiple locations simultaneously? How can something take all possible paths between 2 points? Our brains aren't wired to understand this, because our everyday experience tells us it's impossible. But Heisenberg's mathematics demands that we accept it, and every experimental test has confirmed the mathematics. Electrons really don't have positions. They really do exist in multiple locations simultaneously. They really do take all possible paths between 2 points. And this applies to everything in the universe. Every particle, every atom, every molecule exists in quantum superposition until measurement forces it to collapse into definite states. Now you might be thinking, but I have a definite location. I'm sitting right here. I'm not spread out across space like a probability cloud. And you're right, from your perspective. But according to quantum mechanics, your sense of having a definite location is an illusion created by the constant measurement and interaction of the particles that make up your body. Your body is constantly interacting with the environment. Photons hitting your skin, air molecules bouncing off you, the chair you're sitting in pushing back against you. Each of these interactions is essentially a measurement that forces your quantum state to collapse into something more definite. But between these measurements, you might exist in quantum superposition. In the tiny gaps between interactions, you might spread out across space like a quantum ghost. Existing in multiple locations simultaneously before the next interaction forces you back into definiteness. This suggests something truly terrifying: your sense of continuity. Your feeling of being the same person from moment to moment might be an illusion. You might be constantly dissolving and reforming, dying and being reborn, existing and not existing in rapid succession as the quantum states of your body collapse and reform. Heisenberg understood how disturbing this was. In his private letters and journals, he wrote about the terror he felt when he first realized what his equations were telling him. He described feeling like he was standing at the edge of an abyss, looking into a reality so alien that it threatened his sanity. He tried to find ways to make quantum mechanics less radical, less threatening to our common-sense understanding of reality. He worked with other physicists to develop interpretations that would preserve some sense of objective reality. But the mathematics was relentless. No matter how they tried to soften it, the conclusion remained the same. Particles don't have definite properties until measurement creates those properties. So Heisenberg chose to hide the full implications of his discovery. He presented the uncertainty principle as a limitation on measurement rather than a fundamental feature of reality. He allowed people to believe that electrons have positions, we just can't know them precisely. This was perhaps the greatest scientific cover-up in history. Heisenberg knew that if people understood what quantum mechanics really said about reality, it would cause mass psychological crisis. So he packaged the truth in technical language that obscured its revolutionary implications. But we can't hide from the truth forever. And the truth is that everything you think you know about existence is wrong. Position is an illusion. Objects don't exist at specific locations in space. They exist as probability patterns that can span vast regions of space, collapsing into definiteness only when forced to by measurement or interaction. This has profound implications for how we think about identity, consciousness, and free will. If your body doesn't have a definite position, then what are you? If your brain exists in quantum superposition, then are your thoughts definite? Are your memories real, or are they quantum superpositions of all possible memories that collapse into specific recollections when you try to remember them? Some physicists believe that consciousness itself might be a quantum phenomenon. Perhaps consciousness is what collapses quantum superpositions into definite states. Perhaps the reason you experience having a definite location is that your consciousness is constantly measuring itself, constantly collapsing its own quantum state into definiteness. But this raises even more disturbing questions. If consciousness creates definite reality through measurement, then what happens when you're unconscious? Do you dissolve into quantum superposition when you sleep? Do you cease to exist as a definite entity, and then reform when you wake up? Maybe sleep isn't just rest, maybe sleep is death, a temporary dissolution into quantum uncertainty, from which you emerge as a slightly different person, with slightly different memories in a slightly different location. And what about other people? Right now, you can see them and interact with them, which forces them to collapse into definite states. But when you're not observing them, do they exist in definite locations? Or do they spread out across space like quantum ghosts, existing everywhere and nowhere until your next interaction with them forces them back into definiteness? This suggests that other people might not have continuous existence. They might exist only when you observe them, dissolving into quantum uncertainty when you look away. The world might be constantly disappearing and reappearing based on what you choose to observe. Even more terrifying, if measurement creates reality, then different observers might create different realities. The world you observe might be different from the world other people observe. We might all be living in separate, overlapping quantum realities that occasionally intersect when we interact with each other. This could explain why people sometimes remember the same events differently. Maybe they're not misremembering. Maybe they're remembering different versions of reality that collapsed into definiteness based on their different observations and measurements. Heisenberg's discovery doesn't just challenge our understanding of physics, it challenges our understanding of existence itself. If particles don't have positions, then nothing has a definite location. If nothing has a definite location, then space itself might be an illusion. Maybe there is no space. Maybe there are no definite locations. Maybe everything exists in a timeless, spaceless realm of pure possibility, and what we experience as space and time and definite locations are just patterns in this underlying quantum reality. This would mean that the universe isn't made of matter moving through space and time. The universe is made of information, of possibility, of probability patterns that sometimes collapse into the illusion of definite existence. We might be living in something like a cosmic computer simulation, but not one created by some external programmer. We might be living in a creating, self-observing, informational process where consciousness and reality are so intertwined that neither can exist without the other. And the most terrifying part of all, we can never know if this is true, because the very act of trying to observe reality changes reality. We're trapped inside the system we're trying to understand, forever cut off from any external perspective that could tell us what's really happening. Heisenberg tried to hide this truth because he knew how terrifying it is. He knew that if people really understood what quantum mechanics says about reality, it would destroy their ability to function in everyday life. How do you live normally when you know that nothing has a definite location, including yourself? But maybe that's exactly why we need to know the truth. Maybe our comfortable assumptions about reality are preventing us from understanding our true nature. Maybe we need to accept that existence is far stranger and more wonderful than we ever imagined. Every time you reach for an object, you're not grabbing something with a definite location. You're interacting with a probability pattern that collapses into definiteness at the moment of contact. Every time you look in a mirror, you're not seeing a reflection of something with a definite position. You're seeing the collapse of your quantum superposition into a specific visual state. You are not a solid object moving through space. You are a pattern of possibilities that occasionally crystallizes into definiteness. You are a quantum ghost pretending to be substantial, a wave pretending to be a particle, a probability pretending to be a certainty. And once you understand this, once you really accept what Heisenberg discovered, you can never see reality the same way again. The solid world dissolves into patterns of possibility. The definite becomes indefinite. The certain becomes uncertain. You realize that existence itself is not what you thought it was. And that realization is simultaneously the most terrifying and the most liberating discovery you can make. Because if nothing has a definite position, then everything is possible. If reality is created by observation, then you are a creator of reality. If the universe exists in quantum superposition until measurement collapses it into definiteness, then every moment offers infinite possibilities. You are not trapped in a predetermined reality. You are participating in the ongoing creation of reality itself. Every observation you make, every measurement you perform, every choice you make collapses infinite possibilities into specific actualities. Electrons don't have positions, neither do you. And in that absence of definite location lies the infinite possibility of existence itself. This is the truth Heisenberg tried to hide from you. Now you know. The question is, what will you do with this knowledge? How will you live in a universe where nothing is where you think it is, including yourself? The answer to that question might just determine not only your future, but the future of reality itself. Because in a quantum universe, observers and the observed are inseparably linked in the ongoing dance of existence. You are not just watching the universe, you are creating it, one collapsed possibility at a time. And that is perhaps the most beautiful and terrifying truth of all.